What's up, guys? It's Kavi here, bringing to you a little knife review video today. I'm pretty excited, actually. If you guys go back and look at the very first video I posted, it was a contest entry into one of Neptune Knives contests, where he wants us to do a video review using kind of his format. Could be any piece of knife, gear, what have you. The prize is a Hinderer, so that's pretty awesome right there. You know, I don't know, I kind of thought that the initial 5 people had been picked. I thought maybe I wasn't one of those 5, so I went ahead and did the review on the Benchmade 707 sequel, and this was going to be my second video for the entry if I got chosen to go on. But since I already did a video on that one, I picked another knife that I've had for years now, and you know, I really like it. And of course you can see it here, it's the Spyderco Manix 2. So the way it's going to work is, just to recap again, so it's kind of broken down into 2 categories. The first one being utility, so we're going to grade it out of 3 on concept, construction, and cutting performance. And then the second half is going to be CQC type grading, where we're going to look at deployment, design, performance, and then also final impression. So 7 categories, 3 points each, for a total of 21 points. So let's get right into it. You know, I was just looking, before I did this video, I was looking at the specs on this on Spyderco's website here. So you got Spyderco's website, and they're talking, this is the Manix 2, right? But if you look right here, the steel, it says CPM S30V. So I don't know if they've changed that or what the deal is there, but on mine at least, you can see 154 cm. So they may have upgraded the steel on the Manix 2. I'm not sure. That could just be a typo as well. But I'm kind of interested to see if it is actually an S30V steel, because that's a little bit of a difference. So according to those same specs, so you're looking at a 3 1/4 inch blade, 8 inches overall, and a weight of 5 ounces. And part of what that is, of course, you got this nice 154 cm steel blade. The blade is quite thick, you can see there, and the liners, I don't know if we can see, there you go, not milled out at all. So you got full stainless steel liners right through the whole knife, and then G10 scales on top. So the full steel liners, that definitely adds some weight to it. So right away we're going to look at the, you know, get right into it here. Concept, you know, the concept of this knife is I think pretty clearly defined. It's supposed to be a hard use folder. I wouldn't say survival style hard use. I don't know that there is a real survival style folder, but you know, for everyday tasks and stuff, this is definitely an EDC blade that's been put on steroids, right? It's not your typical EDC slicer. This thing is designed to really get in. It's got a real aggressive grip, an excellent fine tip. You can see there. Look at that tip. You know, so it's built for penetrating. It is a saber ground, hollow ground. You know, so you know, for the overall concept of this, I'm going to say it's probably a utility blade. And I would say could be used in an EDC roll, but we'll talk about that a little bit here. But I think for, you know, a work knife, if you're using it, you know, I mean, look at this blade here. It's nice satin finish. And I don't know if the camera will be able to pick it up. I've got very few scratches on this knife because of this real high finish. Holds up real well against that. So most of what I've done with this knife has been cutting drywall, masonite, and then maybe some heavy cardboard. Actually, when we got new appliances a couple years back, I used this knife to open up the boxes and break down all the materials, and it worked really well. You know, so the overall concept of this being a utility knife, you know, there are some issues kind of, I think, with maybe with ergonomics, and you know, this knife is a little bit all over the map. It can be used for a variety of roles, but for utility role, I think that, you know, the concept of this knife, I'm going to give it a 2, and the reason I'm not going to give it a 3 is because I do still kind of find that the ball lock is a little bit of well, it's a little cumbersome to use, you know, and we'll keep going with that here. Construction is excellent on this knife. I love 154 cm steel. I've touched this one up a few times, but it holds an awesome edge. The pivot is nice and good size pivot. This ball lock, you know, there are some videos out there on YouTube where people had this lock style fail on them. And I believe that was just a few models early on when it got first introduced. But this is a solid lock. I mean, just have a look at this lock up here. When it snaps in, I mean, you can't gradually put that in. It just grabs a hold and it is rock solid. No play, even if you're wiggling from the tip of the blade. It's a super solid knife. You know, full steel liners, you know, as far as durability goes, that's as good as it's going to get, right? Milling, whether it does weaken the structure or not, having full steel liners is definitely not going to hurt the construction. And this knife feels solid in hand. It definitely has that sort of overbuilt ruggedness, you know, to it. And the nice thing too is you've only really got 3 screws. You got this lanyard tube in the back, but the lock mechanism basically ends here. And this lanyard tube kind of works as a standoff. And look at the size of that thing. That is a huge lanyard hole. Huge. You know, so construction, I'm going to go ahead right away and give it a 3. I don't think you could build this any tougher. I think this knife is really well built. And of course, I mean, just look at the action on this with the ball lock. You know what I mean? I mean, this blade just swings down as soon as the ball tension is removed, and yet there's no play at all on it. So that's pretty nice. Cutting performance. Well, I just had some stuff here, and I think I just threw it in the garbage cleaning my kitchen. But we'll get right into it. Now, keep in mind, I have touched this edge up. I've used this knife. I've had it for years. So, you know, cutting performance on cardboard, you know, that's not Spyderco's edge. That's my edge. But you know, as far as like, you know, getting a real good penetrating tip on this knife, it works really well for the breakdown of any kind of materials. You know, she slices real well. You know, cardboard, just like nothing. I mean, you got such a fine edge on this that, you know, nothing. You know, so for cutting performance, it works really well. One of the downsides, though, that I will say is because it does have a more of a fine tip, you may find things like wood or some heavier materials. Like I say, though, I've done a lot of drywall, and I use that tip quite a bit, and it hasn't been too bad. But also, you know, full flat ground is kind of a little bit more of my preference. I like this blade, but I do kind of wish the grind line was a little bit higher, you know, so you didn't have such an increase in width right here. And it's pretty substantial. If you look at the tip, you can see where it really, you know, the width, it goes really nice and thin, but it bulks up really quick. I think if that was a little more gradual, it would have a little bit better cutting properties. Case in point, this is paramilitary 2, full flat ground, and you can see it's a lot more gradual, especially along the tip. And this knife has proven, for me at least, to be a better slicer. So for cutting, I'm going to give this a 2 on the Manix. Oh shoot, I like it. It does a good job. definitely has an excellent grip for cutting. You know, and that's important as well. It's not just the edge, but having a real good handle for cutting. So we'll carry on with that. Now, as far as like the CQC side of things, one thing that I think this knife takes a lot of heat for are these proud liners. See, it's got this nice jimping right here on the blade, right there. That jimping is nice and hard cut, and then you've got kind of this proud liner stuff that doesn't really provide a whole lot of traction, but you can feel it. It's definitely there. And then also on the bottom, you've got some more this proud liners, and then you've got some jimping on the underside, you know, and it is grippy, but it's you know, not really amazing for what I like. Also, the G10 is I'm gonna say medium traction. It's not as aggressive as my Para 2, but I can't remember if it was more aggressive when I first got it, and now that I've just had it, it's kind of worn out because it feels more grippy kind of near the pocket clip area instead of on the face of the handle. So one thing that I think with this knife, you know, with these proud liners, I think this knife is really designed for a gloved hand, and they talk about that on Spyderco's website. You know, the oversized lanyard or oversized spidey hole helps with using gloves. And so here's a couple pairs of gloves that I use. I mostly use CLC gloves, but you know, these ones here are probably my oldest, most heavy-duty work gloves, and they're leather on leather on leather on the mitt here. Like, I mean, it's a substantially thick glove. And what I love about the Manix over other knives that I use is that this sort of proud liners allows for tactile feedback when wearing a glove. See, I can feel that through the glove, which is nice, because when you're working and it's cold and you've been cutting and your hand's getting stiff, being able to feel the orientation of the knife without having to always look at it or check it or, you know, feel it. Because I've had situations where I'm cutting and I'm cutting and I'm cutting and I'm cutting, and then all of a sudden I go to cut and I'm holding the knife, you know, at an angle because my grip has allowed the knife to slide, or it's cold, or I'm, you know, just overusing it. And being able to feel that jimping or that proud liners gives me a real good advantage when I'm wearing a gloved hand, because I can figure out the orientation of that knife real easily. And so I think that as far as, you know, if you're wearing gloves, I think you're going to find it's a huge advantage. Now, that being said, the ball lock mechanism to pull back on the ball lock is a real pain with gloved hand, because you can't feel that as much. You know, you have to kind of know where it is, but you don't feel this section isn't as raised. See where it is there? You can see that it is raised, but it's not, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. I would almost prefer it, instead of being raised at the back, it was raised at the front. That way, when I pull back, I could feel the lip right away where the polymer cage is. You know, so there's some drawbacks there. Also, I did find that deploying this knife, because of this finger choil here, with a gloved hand, this corner sometimes catches on the glove. I don't know if you can see that. You know, so sometimes I get to there and it just jams. Where other knives, say the Para 2, it's not as pointy. So even if I hit it, it just kind of rolls off. And where the hole is relative to the raised section here on the choil, on the Manix, it's a lot closer. You see, it's a lot more of a pointy choil than on the Para 2. So it kind of gets hung up there a little bit more. But you know, with a gloved hand, the ergonomics on this knife are just phenomenal. So you know, really, if you're having to use it quite a bit, and you're relying on a folder versus a fixed blade, this is a really good option for gloved hand. So on that, I'm going to give the deployment a 2 because in my mind, deployment is just as important getting the knife out and ready as it is getting it closed and put back away. You know, so it's not really one-handed operation if I need to reorientate this knife or use my other hand to close it. You know, for me, it's mostly work. It's less self-defense role, but you know, so for deployment, I'm going to give it a 2. Just because it's kind of fits into 2 different worlds there. Now, as far as design, CQC design, I think the design is quite good as well. You got this excellent ergonomic handle that really helps with the prevention of forward egress. I'm really concerned about my hand slipping off and my hand now dragging along the blade of a knife, especially in a CQC situation or self-defense role. The last thing you want to do is go to employ your knife and there goes your fingers, right? So having a real good finger choil like that, the jimping on top is aggressive, it's properly placed. You know, at least I find that for my hand it fits really well. It does allow you to choke up if you want to get in to do some more fine work, but immediately, you know, this knife really locks into your hand and provides an excellent grip. So, you know, I'm gonna have to praise it for that. You know, on the downside, because it is it's a 5-ounce knife and it's pretty heavy. To be honest, a lot of times I don't take this knife because it's heavier. So if I'm wearing shorts in the summer or something that's not jeans, I reach for something a little bit lighter. And this is probably going to be a huge contender for me this summer. But also the Para 2, a nice lighter option, and of course the saw gauges. I mean, this is a super light knife, and it works really well as kind of a self-defense role. You know, and that's not to say that the Manix can't, you know, but you do have to put up with that extra weight, and I think from a you know, load out or camping or whatever you're doing, whatever type of gear you've got on you, if it's carrying a flashlight or, you know, even packing an extra set of gloves, all this weight stuff kind of does add up. And especially for pocket real estate, you know, the Manix isn't the greatest for pocket real estate, right? So if you've got other items in your pocket, you know, the way that this clip is and how much of a large portion of the knife is off-centered from the clip, as opposed to, you know, the Para 2. Try and get these lined up. So if I orientate the clip vertically, this one's a lot more centered to the overall width of the knife. You know, so this takes up a lot more room in your pocket, and that might prevent you from being able to carry something else, or while you're trying to take out a flashlight or something, you are knocking this knife around. So for design, you know, it's got some pros and cons there, but I'm going to give it a 2, kind of park it right in the middle again, and you know, give it that for design. Now for performance, again, you've got kind of 2 worlds here. You've got a really great ergonomic knife. It fits great in the forward grip, reverse grip. It feels quick in hand. You know, it feels reliable in hand. You know, but back to kind of what I was saying earlier about this choil deployment. You know, this knife is super smooth. You know, along its rotation, it's really smooth, but the spring is really strong. And when I got this knife, people kept saying, oh, the spring will break in, it'll loosen up on you. It'll be almost like an axis lock by the end. And it's nowhere near like an axis lock. It requires 2 fingers to pull this one down. I mean, you can maybe do it with 1, but it's super stiff. This lock has remained really tight. But yet you can see that when the pressure's relieved, the blade just swings freely. You know what I'm saying? So the travel is smooth in the fact that it's made well, but the lock is not allowing for ease of deployment, we're going to say. You know, so as far as performance goes, it's still hindered on how it opens, because that's part of, you know, as far as I'm concerned, CQC deployment or CQC performance and deployment kind of go into the same category. But if you did have to employ this, you know, it grips really well both ways. It's got a great tip for piercing. It does have a little bit of a raised finger choil here, so you might run into some problems if you're going to cut something and it hits the finger choil. You may snag up on that, and that's kind of the disadvantage to having this extra finger choil, right? If you were going at something and you hit that choil instead of the edge, you're not going to cut through it. So, you know, and it all depends on, you know, the situation, obviously, but the grip is really strong. The blade moves fast in hand, but the weight is a little bit substantial, and there's some drawbacks with the deployment. So I'm going to give it a 2 on performance as well. And then lastly, it's just kind of final impressions on the knife. I really like this knife, but I think I like it more than I like it. I think that I like the idea of this knife, but actually handling it and using it, I don't find it's as good as other knives. While this is a great knife, once you have something else to compare it to, I carried the Manix quite a bit until my paramilitary came in, and I almost, anytime I go to take the Manix, I put it in my pocket. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna go with the Para 2 instead, because it's lighter. It's a better knife. This is basically it, just improved upon this design in every way. You know, so if I chose to carry this knife more, I would probably give it a 3, because I think that it's really strong, it's durable, it's dependable, it gets the job done. It's very Spyderco essence, right? It's all built around function, and maybe not so much built around, you know, trying to beautify a knife or make it look elegant. This is basically, you know, a tool, right? And so for final impressions, I'm going to give it a 2, simply because I don't reach for this one enough to carry it. And if I liked it more to carry it, I would give it a 3. But I love everything about the design and construction. I think it's, you know, really well done, but because I think that there's better options out there, I got to give it a 2. So out of 21, sorry, it's going to get a 15 on a score of 15. And you know, don't let anything I said sway you from buying this knife. Ultimately, my main question here is, if I lost this knife, would I buy it again? And the answer is absolutely yes. And I bought this one at a specialty shop, and I think I paid like $115 or $120 for it. So I overpaid for this knife, and I'm still saying I would buy it again. So that's a testament to, you know, the Spyderco Manix. But that's pretty much it. So wish me luck, guys, and I'll post this up as a response for Neptune. Catch you later.